Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Fairman. I'm chair of the Parent Involvement Committee. I've been involved with the Parent Involvement Committee for the last 7 years and for the past 4 years as chair. At this time, I'm going to invite Amanda Lloyd, vice chair, to introduce herself.
Rookie mistake, I was muted. Hi, my name is Amanda Lloyd, and this is my 5th year on PIC, my first year as vice chair. And I do want to mention that somebody did post in the chat that if you tap on the screen, there's going to be a text bubble that might pop up. I don't know if that will help with the Android user who was having issues, but I just wanted to let you know as well. So I will send it back to Amanda Fairman.
Thanks, Amanda. At this time, I'd like to welcome Chair of the Board of Trustees, Dawn Danko, to say a few words.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. I think so. Welcome, everyone. It's lovely to see the turnout for tonight for your school council startup session. And as much as we love being in person, I know that we never were able to get this many people out. So I think sometimes there are advantages to virtual events. My name is Dawn Danko. I'm chair of the board. I'm looking better in that picture than on screen. And so I want to, on behalf of the board, welcome you tonight and thank you for the work that you do as volunteers on school councils. It is a really important role in school, and I know that over this past year, it hasn't felt the same as it did in the past. I know when I was back on school council, part of what was really rewarding was being in the school and helping organize events and fundraisers and doing things that enhance the school for our children. But please know that the work you do, whether it's virtual meetings or activities in the school, they're so valuable. They do certainly help us improve the school environment. They help our schools stay connected to the community, and that's such an important piece. So thank you for that. I also just want to say a quick thank you to the organizers for tonight and to our Parent Involvement Committee for sponsoring tonight's event. And with that, I will turn it back to our presenters.
Thank you, Dawn. At this time, I would like to invite Heather Lambert-Hillen from the Home and School Association to say a few words. Heather?
Hi, and thank you. And I apologize, I'm on as one of the kids tonight. Just want to talk a little bit about Home and School. So we're an independent, parent-driven organization. We're committed to supporting public education and promoting the welfare of children and youth. Home and School strives to give parents an understanding of schools and to be informed, constructive partners with educators. We truly are looking for the best for each student. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. So tonight, our learning goals are to understand the mandate, roles, and responsibilities of school councils, understand the membership and makeup of a school council, and understand the duties of the principal and the parent members of the school council. But before we get to the school council training, Sean, if you can go to the next slide. At this time, we are going to have a special presentation this evening regarding safe schools. And I would like to welcome Jason Rizza and Superintendent Sharon Stefanian to present this to us tonight.
Thanks, Amanda, and good evening, everyone. It is fantastic to be here, and Jason and I are really looking forward to sharing with everyone around this virtual table an update on our Safe Schools Action Plan. I am first going to do a sound check because internet has not been working really well for me today, so I was a little choppy earlier. Jay, can you hear me okay? Am I fine?
I can. I'm at the Ed Center. Good evening, everyone. Apologies, I'm at the Ed Center and the internet is not fabulous here. So I will introduce myself as this and then turn my camera off, hoping that will help.
Okay, thanks, Jay. And I'm just going to ask Jay or Sean, if you're losing me and I get choppy, let me know and I will turn my camera off as well, because sometimes that helps. And Jason is loading up, thank you, Jason, our PowerPoint for this evening. As I had mentioned, we're very excited to be here to provide a little bit of an update on our board's Safe Schools Action Plan. I will let you know that at the end of the presentation, there is a little bit of an ask for school council members. So I give that to you as a little bit of a heads up as we head into the presentation. Also, I do apologize. There may be some individuals around the table who also participated in our spring Safe Schools pop-up sessions. And so if you did, some of the information may be a little bit repetitive, but there will be new information shared this evening as well. Jay, can I get you to flip to the next slide? And I will turn it over to you, Jay, to just set a little bit of context around what we're going to cover this evening.
Hello. I don't know. This is a bigger meeting.
Thank you, Sharon. As most, if not all of you know, we did have our expert panel over the last 18 months or closer now to well, almost 2 years, do a lot of community consultation in terms of what bullying was looking like in Hamilton and across our schools and our communities. And from that came the expert panel's report on bullying. And we're just going to go through some of the high-level findings, as well as what the outcomes of those findings have been and how they've helped set direction for our Safe Schools Action Plan, as well as moving forward how we plan to implement a lot of the recommendations within that plan. So we heard and we know that bullying is a significant problem in our schools, in HWDSB schools, and across the city, really. 60% of our students were bullied at any rate and 20% frequently. These are pre-COVID, and obviously that consultation was extended a little bit with COVID happening right in the middle of our expert panel's community consultations. We also learned, and somewhat not a surprise, that those of our students who identify as Two-Spirit LGBTQIA+ were particularly vulnerable. We know that many children and youth experience bullying because of their race, ethnicity, newcomer status, sexuality, gender identity, disability, religion, or Indigenous identity, and that bullying causes significant harm. So throughout the presentation tonight, some have seen these, some have not, but we've included them because we thought it was important to have the voice of those who were involved in the consultations and who really shared the gift of their stories and their experiences to help inform some of the outcomes of the panel's research. Here we can see that this quote, although I won't read it word for word, we know that this is a significant issue in our schools in terms of hate, bias, and prejudice language and its impacts on all of our students, especially those who have traditionally been underserved and oppressed. So already working through Safe Schools, through the work of our planning that you'll see a little bit more and hear a little bit more about tonight, as well as our secure schools and our progressive discipline policies to help make sure that we demonstrate not just through words, but through actions, what we heard loud and clear and what we are doing to restructure the way we do things in order to honor those voices even further. We know in particular areas of low supervision are problematic in terms of where bullying is happening. And when it does take place, we also heard the inconsistent processes for reporting and responding to these, as well as perceived or real lack of action in terms of communication and the communication processes involved with updating all parents and all those involved, including witnesses, those perpetuating the bullying, targets, and all families and parents, caregivers, guardians that are involved in that process. We also heard from everyone including educators and administrators, that there's a lack of role clarity, transparency, and accountability when it comes to the reporting and response to bullying. And while many staff recognize they play a critical role in prevention and intervention, they also spoke of not always knowing how to respond appropriately when they witness an incident of bullying. Many staff, families, parents, students want practical, targeted training and knowledge. And finally, educators and principals are critical champions for this positive school climate and affecting bullying response. But we heard from all those consulted that curriculum expectations, multiple competing priorities, and inability to effectively utilize community-based expertise and resources make it difficult to respond to bullying effectively. Sharon's going to be touching on this a little bit, but really excited to really embrace the resources and structures outside of those traditional ones that we've used as a board and in education to really collect the voice and expertise of others involved and hopefully change the trajectory in which we address anything to do with bullying and listening to voice in general. Another quote from the community consultation. We can see that this individual experienced verbal, social, physical bullying as a result of their identity and how they identify. So through the work and our review of the recommendations, we've learned about several organizational and systemic issues that make it very difficult to effectively prevent and respond to bullying. People want to create a culture of caring at school, but there are many times when a culture of fear prevents people from reporting or taking action. We as a system are missing a clear and prominently stated commitment to bullying prevention and core organizational values that help to guide decisions and behaviors. And we're really hoping the work of our working groups and our advisory tables that Sharon's going to unpack in just a few minutes will help guide this work further. We know that evidence has demonstrated in addressing bullying in schools that prioritizing and supporting healthy relationships and creating a culture of care where every adult and every school has the capacity and responsibility to address bullying in a way that they feel supported to support our students and their families. One of the parents who participated in a community consultation session really brought this to the forefront and suggesting to move from protecting the brand to protecting the student, and really speaks for itself. We're here to share that all of our work is and should always be to protect our students, and what better way to collaborate with families, parents, staff, community to do that in an informed way that that really shows that the student is at the center of all we do. Sharon, did you want to take over at this point?
Sure, Jay, that's awesome. And I'm sorry, I did. Oh, Jay, can you go on mute? Apologies. Sorry, I did turn my camera off because I was losing you, Jay. I'm going to turn it back on and see how we do. So we certainly will share this slide deck with everyone through Amanda so that you have the information, because we know some of it is difficult to read. But this particular slide is an overview of our board's positive culture and well-being priority. This particular priority for us at the system level as well as at school is really has a focus on improving the well-being of all students and staff and to close the gap for those who have been historically underserved. And there are a number of different strategies, and it may be very difficult to see, but the arrow at the bottom is pointing to the strategy specifically that speaks to establishing a Safe Schools action plan that responds to the recommendations from the bullying panel review. As we've been talking about this evening, we have adopted all of the recommendations that were made by the panel. Those were adopted adopted and approved by the Board of Trustees. And the reason why this is an important slide is it's important in terms of our accountability and transparency with parents and with students and with the community. What is included in our board annual plan or in our board plan are those areas that we report to the Board of Trustees and to the community on a regular basis. And so by having a statement within this particular priority referencing the importance of this work, that's one of the ways in which we are committed to being very transparent with everyone around the work that we are doing. Jay? Oh, Jay, did I? Oh, okay. So I want to highlight for everyone around the virtual table this evening our commitments. So when we look at the feedback and the comments that we heard from our students, from our parents, our guardians, our caregivers, and from the broader community, there were a number of themes that came through. And these themes became foundational commitments to how we are engaging in the work with respect to bullying prevention and intervention. As Jay talked about, we heard about the fact that we weren't necessarily always perceived as having transparency and clarity around what our actions were with respect to incidences of bullying. It wasn't always clear how a parent or a student could report incidences of bullying and what they could expect to have happen as a result of that. So we've taken those comments extremely seriously, and what you see on the slide, and I will walk through them, speak to our commitment to you as parents and members of the community, as well as to our student population, around how we will engage in this important work. The first is a relentless focus on building positive and inclusive cultures in all classrooms and schools, a place where everyone belongs, everyone is safe, and everyone achieves. Creating environments where student identity and voice are centered. Students' lived experiences are honored and an essential part of learning. We heard from our students and from our parents how extremely important it was that there are opportunities for student voice, for student agency, for students' lived experiences to become part of the learning in the classroom. We also know fundamentally where bullying happens, it is a relationship issue. So foundational to all of this work is the commitment around the development of relationships that are positive, that are supportive, that are caring, and that are kind. And that's all relationships. So whether it's the relationships that exist from student to student, student to staff, the relationship that central staff have with parents, students, and community, we heard loud and clear that there is a need to develop trust in those relationships. Creating structures to gather, listen, and respond to student voice. Student voice must inform school and board plans. We'll talk about that this evening. And of course, safety is paramount, and incidents of bullying need to be addressed with active involvement of students and families. This includes the student who experiences the bullying, the student who displays the bullying behavior, as well as the students who witness bullying. And again, all of this information needs to be transparent and available so everyone knows what the process is and that there are supports wrapped around any incidents of bullying. Jay? So how are we going to do this? Well, Jason and I have commented on a few of these pieces already, but certainly a big part of that is being transparent. Tonight, we will introduce you to the web space on our board website, where you will have the opportunity to monitor and to see the activities that are happening by way of the work groups that we are currently in the process of forming, where there are opportunities for students and for parents and community to provide input. Those will all be posted. The priorities that each working group are working on, those will also be posted. As we report to trustees, those reports will be included as well. That's only one way in which we're increasing transparency, and we'll talk about more this evening, but that is certainly a priority. Connected to that is ensuring that we create structures to hear voice of students, voice of our parents, guardians, and caregivers, voice from staff, and voice to community. And this evening, we'll talk about the structures that we have created in response to direct conversations from students and parents and community, as being responsive to gathering voice. Improving our engagement with attention to working with those who would be directly impacted by the decisions, building relationships and trust through our actions, and being accountable for student safety and well-being. Jay? So we highlight for everyone around our virtual table this evening the 3 phases of implementation. The first phase being up until the end of August 2021, which essentially was our planning and our direct outreach consultation phase, although there were a number of pilot activities that were undertaken during that period of time. Certainly encourage anyone who may be interested in more information around that to access the website space that I'll share with you this evening. We presented a report to the Board of Trustees in September, providing an overview in detail of the activities between March and August. We're now currently in phase 2. And in addition, there is a detailed action plan that's available that provides an overview of all of the actions included within the plan. We won't be covering those in great detail tonight, but certainly happy to follow up with anyone if they have questions after they've had an opportunity to look at the reports in detail. Jay? So wanted to highlight for everyone the Safe Schools page within the HWDSB website. Again, this is a page that launched this week with the updated information with respect to the Safe Schools Action Plan. So if you go to our board's main website, www.hwdsb.on.ca, you will see at the very bottom, there is a section that says the Spotlight. And the first tab within the Spotlight area is bullying. If you click on that, it will take you to the page that we're on, the Safe Schools page. And you will notice halfway down the page, there is the Safe Schools Action Plan link. Jay, can I get you to, oh, Sean, thank you for populating that. So within that space, you will see a number of different resources. What we have on the slide is a high-level summary of the Safe Schools Action Plan that is included at the link. So again, I encourage you to go to that space. Encourage you to bookmark the space because there will be updates that are shared through that vehicle. And that'll be just one way in which we're sharing the updates. So again, what we have on the slide for you this evening is an overview of the recommendations. There are 11 recommendations that are spread across a number of different areas. So there are some recommendations that are specifically for, Jay, is there a way that you can blow that up a little bit for folks to be able to see? If not, I can read them. It's just, it's really small.
I don't think I'm able to in presentation mode, but what we can do is share this afterwards as well.
Okay, so we'll make sure that we share it out. I will share the categories though. So there are recommendations specifically that are being made for students. I will say that through all of the recommendations and all of the action steps, student voice is paramount. And within the structures of the work, we are responding with a structure specifically dedicated to hearing the voice of our students. There are also recommendations specifically that speak to the involvement of parents, guardians, and caregivers, as well as looking at resources and supports for our families. Then, not surprisingly, there are a series of recommendations specifically for our schools, looking at creating supports and programming with respect to bullying prevention and intervention. Supporting our schools in the development of their bullying prevention and intervention plans, and ensuring that those plans are responding to what the students in the school are telling them in terms of where the focus needs to be. Looking at our special education practices from a student-centered perspective, again with the focus on bullying prevention, and reviewing our policies and our procedures with respect to bullying prevention and intervention, not only from a content perspective and a transparency perspective, but also looking at accountability in terms of the application of those policies and procedures. There are a number of recommendations, and I should share that each recommendation also has within it a series of action steps. So the average recommendation probably has in the area of 5 to 7 action steps, which further break out each recommendation area. And again, if you go to that section on the website, you'll be able to see that. In addition to our students, our parents, guardians, and caregivers in schools, there are recommendations for HWDSB as a system. Really the important piece around setting the foundation for a culture of caring. I am hopeful that many of you around the virtual table may have heard your children talk about reimagining wellness. Our return to school wellness relationship approach, again, really designed to begin the work around or extend the work around creating that foundation for a culture of caring. And also the next recommendation is around support for our school-based leadership in doing this important work. And then recognizing, as Jason said earlier, bullying happens not only in schools, but it happens within the broader community. And so there are recommendations that the panel's made with respect to the community and our work with community partners, as well as some recommendations around our work with the Ministry of Education. Jason? So I'm going to move to talking about our structures, and the structures to do this work are based on the work that we have undertaken speaking with students, speaking with parents, and speaking with community partners. As we talked about this evening, voice is paramount and central in doing this work. So we wanted to ensure that as we were thinking about the structures, we were speaking to those who would be most directly impacted by the outcomes of the work in order to ensure the structures that we were creating were structures that made sense and that were best meeting their needs. And so when you look at this diagram with the pulleys and the gears, it may look like it has lots of different layers, but it's really intended to ensure that as we engage in this work, we are providing as many opportunities as possible to hear from those who are impacted by this important work. So at the center of the diagram are 9 working groups. So as we just walk through the 11 recommendations, and as I mentioned, connected to those, there's approximately 81, over 80 actions connected to those recommendations. They break down into 9 specific theme areas. We are going to be establishing 9 working groups in order for each group to have a very specific focus on a targeted area. So for example, one of the areas is the area around, oh, sorry, Jay, did I lose you? I may have. Let me see if I can share my screen, and I will share the PowerPoint.
I've got it. I've got it.
Oh, Jay's back. Sorry.
I don't know. Something happened. It kicked me out.
It is okay. Have you flipped back?
Turning.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
just now.
Perfect. There we go. So to give you an example of the 9 working group areas, we have a working group that specifically is going to be focusing on the area of character education and healthy relationships. Again, a piece that we know is foundational. There will be a working group specifically looking at policies and procedures. There will be a group that is looking specifically at the areas in schools where bullying happens. And those working groups will have representation from students, from parents, from community partners, from staff who are working directly in schools, from system level staff, as well as our administrators and our union partners. Lots of different perspectives focusing on a very discrete and specific area. Now, those 9 working groups, though, need to gather voice and hear from others beyond those who are at those tables. And that's where the yellow advisory groups come into play. So I'll talk about all 3 of them work in a very similar way. So I'll talk a little bit about I'll talk about the student advisory group first. So student advisory group, like all advisory groups, will be interacting with the working groups. As the working groups have ideas, concepts, something that they're looking for input on, there is an expectation that every working group is going to seek opinion and advice from each of the advisory areas. In addition, those who are on the yellow advisory areas, they will have an option to actually sit on the working groups if they would like to. They don't have to. There may be a student who's interested in being on the student advisory solely, and that's okay. Likewise, there may be a parent who would like to sit on the parent advisory solely, and that is okay. But as an individual, a student, a parent, a partner may say, I'd like to be on the advisory, but I'd also like to participate in one of the working groups. And that certainly is an option. But the expectation is that all of those working groups, as they're generating ideas and approaches, they're going to be seeking advice and consultation from each of those 3 advisory structures. Those structures are going to be led by members of the advisory. So students will lead the student group, parents will lead the parent group, community will lead the community group. Staff are there and present to support the work, but what we heard as we were talking to parents and to students was it was really important that those who were facilitating were people who had a similar lived experience. So I remember when one of the students said to Jason and I, as nice as the 2 of you are, youth don't want to be led by you. They want to be led by other youth. And so very true. So we will have a co-chair structure for each of these advisories. Again, being led by those with the lived experience. Now, one of the questions may be, and we'll talk about this evening, this is kind of where the ask is coming in because we are currently asking parents, inviting parents, guardians, and caregivers to be part of the advisory table. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Beyond those advisory structures, I will share some of the other structures with you. So on the left-hand side of the chart, you will see that there is a Safe Schools Steering Committee. The Safe Schools Steering Committee is a higher level group that will be meeting approximately 3 to 4 times a year. Membership around that table will come from the working groups and from the advisories, and their job is going to be to monitor the implementation of the overall action plan that we spoke about a little earlier this evening, making adjustments along the way where there may be a need for adjustments. The two smaller purple circles, we have the Safe Schools pop-up and we have the Safe Schools Dropbox. So those two concepts came through the conversations again that we were having in the springtime. So what we heard, and this was particularly true from the students, that sometimes students want an opportunity to be involved and to provide voice, but they don't want to make, or they can't make a commitment to sitting on an advisory committee. But they do want to be aware, they do want to be informed, and they want a place where they can provide voice. So the Safe Schools pop-up is exactly what the name would suggest. The sessions will pop up as needed at this point in time through a virtual medium, similar to how we are this evening. And it's an opportunity for any of the working groups or any of the advisory groups to put a question on the table that they're wondering about, where they want some broader community perspective and input around. The pop-up structure will also be used when we're looking to bring an update out to the community around the nature of the work that we're engaging in. So there's no schedule or frequency to them. People can attend, not attend. The idea is it's an opportunity for updates and an opportunity for community and students and parents to respond to things that working groups or advisories may be wondering about. Similarly, the Safe Schools Dropbox is a place that will provide an opportunity for students or for parents to provide any feedback or information directly to working groups and to the advisory. One of the first tasks of the student advisory group is going to be to help to structure what that Dropbox looks like. That was a specific idea that came from students. So we really want student voice to inform what that will look like so that students will in fact access it. And we want to think about, making it as accessible as possible. So maybe people can type in their thinking or they can record a video. Again, students are far more creative than I, but that gives you a bit of a sense of what we heard around that piece. The orange organizational advisory table, that is an internal staff table where the staff, together with union partners and some principal and vice principal representation, will be looking at how structurally all of these pieces fit together and can be operationalized as they come forward from the working groups. And the community-led independent table is a recommendation from the panel around a table that would sit independent to all of this and who would provide oversight transparency function. And we're currently working with the Hamilton Community Foundation to look at some of the research around best practices around what that structure potentially could look like. And I know that I'm running out of time. So Jay, can I get you to flip to the next one? So I've covered a few of these pieces already, but this is the place where we have a bit of an ask. We are reaching out and asking our students and our families in our community to be part of the structures that we just spoke about, and specifically around the advisory group structures. We know that we can't do this work on our own. We really need you. We need your thinking, and we need your perspective and your expertise. So you may have noticed some social media out this week. We've already had some families indicate an interest, but that's one of the reasons we're here this evening. Jay? So questions around advisory group. Right now, the advisory groups will be meeting monthly. Certainly, you all have children within HWDSB. The student advisory group is open to students in elementary and secondary. Parent, guardian, caregiver advisory group, certainly, again, reaching out to this table this evening, whether it's for yourself or this is information you take back and share with your council or your home and school or other parents within your community. In terms of an ask, it really is a commitment to be able to meet that once per month in a virtual setting at this point in time. Jay? What will the groups do? I've highlighted this a little bit, and you can see the various areas, the 9 areas that we will be addressing. The advisory groups are going to be providing input into the working groups, focusing on those 9 areas. As I mentioned, some members of advisory may choose to join a working group, but they don't have to. Our priority right now is to form the advisory structure. Jay? So how to join? So this is very different from any process that we have undertaken for inviting students or parents or community to participate in tables. Again, we heard around the importance for the process to be a process that was invitational, a process that is accessible, and we want to maximize the voice that we're hearing. So as I said, the ask is a commitment to 1 meeting a month, and that you have a strong interest in doing work around bullying prevention and intervention. And if you're interested, then we're asking you to provide to us. There's no application form to fill out. There's no maximum number of members. Once we know how many parents we have who are interested, we will then look at how we will structure the opportunities to come together. So we're looking for your name, the best way to contact you by phone or email, which group you're interested in participating. It says on the slide, parent, guardian, caregiver. We recognize there may be some in the room who are wearing multiple hats. You may have a community partner hat as well. And of course, children. The deadline to express interest is October the 30th. And you also can email us to indicate your interest at Safe Schools Advisory. You can see the address there. I'm sure Sean can pop it into the chat as well. Or you can call and just leave a message on the machine to say, here's my name. Here's my phone number, and I'm interested in the parent advisory group. Again, trying to be to make it as available as possible for families, because we can't do this without you, and we really need your voice in this important work. And I'm 3 minutes over, but for those of you who know me, that's not bad. So at this point, I will turn it back to, am I going back to Amanda or back to Sean?
I believe it's back to me.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Sharon. And it is very true. It is very short over for Sharon. And I would just like to thank both Jason and Sharon for this presentation. And I encourage parents to get involved if you have the time to help make our schools safer for all our children. We will get the information on how to send your interest out to everyone. Sean will include that as part of his information package he'll send out. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and feel free to stick around if you would like, or we are going to continue now with the school council training part of our evening. So the purpose of a school council is to enhance the student learning through the cooperative efforts of parents, students, staff members, and others in the community. Parent involvement is one of the most significant factors contributing to a child's success in school, and when parents are involved in their education, the level of student achievement increases. So attached to your meeting invite was a copy of the school council handbook that we've worked on together through the Parent Involvement Committee in cooperation with a couple of principals from the board that we have put together to give you a general understanding of school council roles and responsibilities. So tonight we're just going to go over, highlight some of the areas from that handbook. So what is a school council? School boards in Ontario are required to establish school councils for each school, and these councils provide the input to the principal or the board on any matter. The principal is ultimately responsible for activities related to the school, and therefore is also responsible for the activities that a school council holds. The membership of a school council is made up of parents and caregivers, the principal, a teacher from a school. In high schools, councils have students that sit on them. A council can also have a non-teaching staff member, a community representative, and for schools with home and school associations, they may also have a representative from that. The majority of members must be parents, and the chair must be a parent. So school councils are governed by legislation under the Ontario Regulation 612, which sets out the purpose, membership, and election requirements for school councils. And the purpose of a school council is through the active participation of parents to improve pupil achievement and to enhance the accountability of the education system to parents.
Amanda, I'm just seeing Stacey's question going back a slide, wondering if all those are all mandatory. So I'll go back.
So mandatory is you must have a principal and you must have a teacher representative. Other than that, your non-teaching staff member, community representative, and a home and school association representative is not mandatory. It would also be up to your school council constitution or bylaws whether or not you mandate any positions in here besides the principal, teacher from the school, and the parent or caregivers. Hope that answers your question. So the role of the school council is to advise the principal and, where appropriate, the school board. Once the voting membership is established, a school council must have quorum to vote. So at your first meeting, you need to establish quorum. So quorum is 50% of the voting membership plus one. So that would be any parent or caregiver present. The teacher representative also gets a vote. So they would be counted as part of your quorum. You must always place the student interests first, and you want to work with the principals to support the school success planning goals. And you want to encourage parent and community involvement within your school environment and promote positive attitudes towards public education.
Just, I see Raisa's comment. Is it mandatory that if there is a home and school association that there's a representative on council?
I don't think that's a question. I think she's making a statement. Risa is from home and school.
Right, thank you.
We can go to the next slide, Sean. The role of the school council chair is the school council chair must be a parent or guardian who is not employed by the school board. The school council chair is elected annually, and in addition to performing the same duties as other school council members, is responsible for the following. So you arrange and chair the meetings. You prepare the meeting agendas in consultation with the principal. You ensure meeting minutes are recorded and maintained by your secretary. Minutes are to be shared with your larger school community by posting them to the school website and keeping a copy in a school council binder on site. You also facilitate the resolution of conflict, and you communicate with the principal on behalf of the council. So one thing to note is every school council has a HWDSB provided email. If you are the school council chair, your principal will be sharing that with you if they have not already. You can inquire with them if you have not received that information. And every September, that email account password is reset because of potential turnover in chairs. A school council's bylaws may also outline additional responsibilities of a school council chair. The role of the principal in a school council is to distribute the material to school council members on behalf of the board and Ministry of Education. They must attend and support and promote council operations, meetings, and other activities. A vice principal actually can act in place of the principal. They also act as an important source of information on the laws, regulations, and board policies and procedures, including advising the council when they may be in breach of board policies and procedures. They solicit the views of the school council members and consider and respond to recommendations. They also may participate in subcommittees of the school council. Principals do not get a vote on any council decisions. Principals must consult school council on school policies regarding school code of conduct, appropriate just for students, and the school plan for continuous improvement. The principal may also wish to involve their school councils and community in conversations around a variety of other subjects. And the principal must always report how this advice has been considered. I'm going to turn over the presentation now to Amanda Lloyd to go through the election procedures for councils.
Thank you. I'm sure that most schools have already done their elections for this year, as the elections do need to be done in the first 30 calendar days of the school year. So a person is qualified to be a parent member of the school council if they're a caregiver of a pupil who is enrolled in the school. The caregiver is not restricted, membership is not restricted to a certain amount of members. A HWDSB employee cannot be a caregiver member on the council of their child's school if they are employed at that school. As an example, at our school, we do have a teacher representative whose daughter is also a student at our school, but she's the teacher representative for us. She's not a caregiver representative. And if there's an HWDSB employee employed at elsewhere in the board, they can be on council for their student as long as they inform people that they are a member of the HWDSB and they are qualified to vote in the election or caregiver members of their employment. So there are stages for the election. Usually you would get a subcommittee, or you'd have the chair, the previous chair and your principal get together. Information as well as a form would be sent home to parents or caregivers to show their interest in a position. Some councils' bylaws will define how many positions are able to be elected. Chair, co-chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, if there's fundraising through the council. Within the first 30 calendar days of the school year, you have to hold the election. It's a little different with COVID. And then once the chair and other positions are elected, the chair would then meet with the principal and they would just take over planning the future meetings with the principal, their vice chair if they have one, ensure that the secretary is providing the minutes and so on. I'll pass it over to Amanda Fearman.
Thanks, Amanda. So we're going to touch on fundraising right now because we all know that's a hot topic. So school councils in most schools are active in fundraising activities in the name of the school, and we must conform to appropriate sanctions of the regulations installed in the Education Act. So ownership of school council funds are owned by the school board, and banking procedures are all handled by school office administration. They will provide a financial report to the school council treasurer once a month or whenever you're meeting. And we keep records of all of the school council funds. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Estella Jones so she can talk more about fundraising in our current climate. Estella?
Thank you very much. And I'll just take a quick moment to thank all the parents and caregivers for joining us tonight and for volunteering their time and energy to their school communities. As Amanda was saying, regarding fundraising, there are some limitations this year, but we're so pleased that we are back and able to do some fundraising this year. So the parameters at this time involve fundraisers that don't involve in-person volunteers and don't have the handling of money or items being passed back and forth. So some examples that could be considered might be something that can be ordered online and delivered directly to homes, or something like a virtual event such as a online auction, something like that, direct donations. Some schools we know have done that in the past, or some sort of partnership with a local business where families can go there. If they mention the school name, a portion of proceeds goes back to the school. So those are some ideas of fundraising events that could be taking place at this time. But of course, we're hoping that in the near future, we'll be able to expand the types of opportunities that will be available for students, but we will be waiting for some guidance from public health around that. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry, we just have a question about collecting donations like canned goods.
So we're not doing that right now, as it involves materials being collected. There might be some opportunity for that in the near future. I know that schools often have fundraising that involve canned goods or even clothing drives, those type of things. So we haven't really opened it up to those at this time, but that's good feedback and perhaps something we can look at including in the near future. Thanks for that. Okay, so I'll just look at the school improvement plans, and as a school council, the work that the school council does ideally aligns with the work of the school, and in turn also is guided by the board's strategic directions. So the two main areas that we're focused on the school level are really regarding learning of students, their learning and their achievement and how they're doing in school, and then that sense of belonging and well-being that we know is so important in terms of how students have that sense of belonging in their school community. So the work that the school council does ideally lines up with that, and if it can promote or support those two directions, then that's wonderful. We always try to monitor and collect data and use our limited resources in a way that will really have the most impact that we're looking for with students, and working with families is a great way to do that. Just a few tips about building the school council. So of course, we want to foster equity and inclusion, and so some things that you might consider as being part of school council would be your communication, knowing the demographics of the school community, and being maybe purposeful or really deliberate in terms of who is being reached out to and in what way to try to be more inclusive. Is language a possible issue, and could that be supported in some way? Are there a variety of communication methods being used in order to try to engage families with the school? And when you're considering meeting dates, you know, just is it on a date that works for most people? Does it land on a religious day of significance. Those sort of considerations could be helpful in trying to build that school council. Okay, I'll speak briefly about the Pro Grant that's available. This is money from the ministry that is designated for school boards to work with their parent involvement committee to engage schools and stakeholders to develop projects that will support schools with developing a safe and welcoming school environment and engaging families into the school community. So right now, the Parent Involvement Committee is working on a process for schools to access the funds related to this grant, and we're really looking forward to a variety of events and proposals that schools will plan to engage their families at their local communities. And volunteers. So again, we are following the guidance from public health, and we do have to limit volunteers in schools, but we are able to have some in-person volunteers, particularly for programs that would otherwise not be able to run without the support of our very valuable volunteers. So, for example, the nutrition program in some schools would not be able to run without our volunteers, and so there's a protocol to follow, and there's immunization attestation that is done. So we're really trying to keep things safe and minimize contacts, but where necessary or where the program really is in jeopardy without the volunteer, then we are able to access that support, which is really wonderful. And tied to that are extracurricular activities. So in some cases, our volunteers are coaches, and so with the ability to run some extracurricular activities for students, we are now being able to run those programs because of the protocols we have in place and the opportunities for those volunteers. If you are volunteering, you might notice for the outdoor activities, we are able now to also have spectators on site to cheer on our students and to watch the activities. There are some contact tracing and screening measures in place, which involve a QR code so that we can comply with public health measures. But it's really great that we're able to have spectators participate in our events now. Regarding indoor events, we're working on a process to allow that opportunity as well. So stay tuned for more information there. And I see a number of questions, so I don't know if we want to go to that, Sean.
I was able to just connect with our senior manager of finance just to confirm the funds that go into school council that go towards school council operations, I guess, and the $500 is available and it has been loaded into school accounts as of September, so that's a great thing.
That is really great. So there's two allocations of funds available. So the $500 is a parent engagement fund, which each school will have access to already. And then the Parent Reaching Out grant is a separate one, which more information about the process to access that money will be coming out soon. So please watch for that, but you could start thinking about what type of needs there are in the school and maybe have some conversation with the principal to see if there are any needs and what ideas the group could come up with. So that will be coming. Is there any other questions?
Jenny had a question. Just do we know when the Parent Reaching Out grant will be open? And I'm wondering if you may have already addressed that. And I'm sorry if maybe you have addressed that already.
So it will be. We're trying to make it available and accessible as soon as possible. We've just been the funds have just come to the board, and so the Parent Involvement Committee is currently working on a process of how to have schools obtain access to that funds. So we're just working on the process. I'm really hopeful in the next, well, before the end of the school year, we'll have that process out and be able to utilize that in the, after the new year.
And Lindsay had a question about, are these funds available for interpreters to attend school council meetings? I mean, that's such a wonderful offering. I don't know if sorry, my dog's in the background. I don't know if that might be maybe more than what the funds are allocated for. However, if you feel that there is a need for that, it's a great opportunity to explore that. Stella?
Yeah, that should be possible. It's a way to engage parents. We don't want language to be a barrier. So that certainly could be considered depending on your school needs.
Wonderful. And how would we get more information regarding volunteers for nutrition programs? So
that's at a school level. So if some schools run the program with school staff, and so volunteers are not part of the program, so then they wouldn't necessarily be required, but some schools aren't able to run it that way, and so that's where volunteers would be most welcomed to come into the school to support the program. So if you want to check in with your school to see kind of how they're managing it, if then they need some support and you are willing to do that, I know that would be appreciated.
Estella?
Yes.
Maybe you could quantify the different types of nutrition programs, because there could be confusion around that, right? Because the type of nutrition programs allowed are different than school council running pizza day, right?
Oh, okay. So yes, pizza day or sub day, those type of things, that would be separate. Those would not be part of the nutrition program as I'm speaking about. So there are, we work with different organizations and they provide funding for nutrition programs where we provide food for students to access as needed throughout the day, and there's they follow the nutrition policy of all of that sort of stuff. So this is a program that is supported not through purchase by students, but is funded and provided to all of the students on a regular basis. And so it's managing that process. Sometimes some schools use volunteers to help with that.
That's wonderful. Can volunteers help to run other non-sport programs in the school?
Yeah, that could be decided at the school level. So if there was a type of club or activity that wouldn't run without a volunteer, there would likely be a school, oh, I should be careful how I say that. It might not be in person, it could also be virtual. So if it depends on the type of activity, if it's sort of a enhancement of something like an art program or something like that, then a volunteer could participate in a way where it was done virtually, and that would be no problem. In fact, any type of volunteer virtually would be fine. But the type of program would have to be specific to the needs of the school. So that would be a conversation to have with the principal in terms of whether or not that was really critical and would allow for a volunteer to come in person. But virtually, there's lots of opportunities to support different teams or clubs.
And Heather has a question about fully vaccinated volunteers, and will all volunteers need to be fully vaccinated prior to the event that they are helping out at?
Yes, so that is part of the criteria. So there is a volunteer package that needs to be completed when you apply to be a volunteer, and part of that now includes an attestation and verifying that you're fully vaccinated. It's only done with the principal. We don't take a copy of anything. It's secure, but it does have to be verified by the principal that the volunteer is fully vaccinated. We're just trying to maintain as safe environment as possible for our staff and students.
That's great. Thanks, Estella.
You're welcome.
I'm happy to jump in now.
So I'm passing it to you. Thank you.
So these next few sections really talk about communication, and this is just the area that I'm really passionate about, obviously. But there's a lot of information in the handbook that talk about some tips for communication as it relates to operationalizing and communicating your school council meetings, and also just some opportunities to have communication as a way of enhancing some engagement opportunities at the school. So these are some tangible tips here in terms of getting the word out, making sure that people know when your school council meetings are available. You might want to always be mindful of those, maybe not on school council, but the broader parent community and how they would want to receive information about the business of school council. So having available meetings, I know we're virtual now, so that might be a little bit difficult, but having an open forum potentially of having guests coming in, welcoming new members, just keeping it updated information about when your school council meetings are available. School signage is often a good idea when you have people who are walkers, who are driving in and around the school. If you have an electronic sign, that would be great. School newsletter. I know that we are using a lot of website blog posts, and that's an easy opportunity to be able to submit something to your principal if you wanted to coordinate some of that communications and have that available on your school website. There's also lots of just different engagement opportunities. So thinking about some of the key pieces that happen throughout the school year and how you can associate yourself with it, how school council can be part of it. So again, knowing that we're in a different time right now, but thinking about some opportunities when we can get back to these opportunities, like kindergarten orientation nights, open house nights, meet the teacher nights. Again, those are virtual right now, but maybe there's an opportunity to look at something digital for those opportunities. If we were back in person, we could obviously have somebody present, maybe a booth set up to just promote and advocate for the work and role of school councils to get more people interested in that. And then sharing your school council report with the community, so posting it on your school website might be a good idea. If you have a distribution list, if you collect some of that information, maybe there's a distribution list that you're able to send it to the broader community. Potentially work with the principal on that, because there may be an already existing distribution email list that the office maintains. And then of course there's opportunities for school messenger, which I'll just kind of go into the next section here as we sneak into this. But school messenger might be an opportunity as well to use the service that's available as our school to home notification service. And school messenger, you can email, phone, and you can also text. Now, I just share this. We don't want to overuse school messenger, and we want to really just save it for the most important things. Somebody who, my team, we have been using school messenger a lot, especially during COVID, and we know that school messenger notifications are quite valuable, and we don't want to overuse that. So I just share that just because if you do have a large event, maybe you can work in collaboration with your school principal and share out a school messenger notification to everybody on that. These are just, over the years, we've taken into consideration some of the questions and some of the feedback from our school councils, and just some of the best practices ways to engage parents at your school, and some of the communication tools that you can use to reach parents. So I will send out a package later this week, just reviewing all this and having a lot of this information for you. But some of these are really great opportunities. And if you get used to some of the ways to deliver this message and you're consistent with that, then parents and the broader parent community at your school will become more accustomed to how that information is shared with them to keep them well informed. I will say that in my profession, as well as when we're talking about communication in general, there's something called the 4-step process. I won't get too detailed into that, but the first step in that is about research. And I share that with you because when you are looking at how your parents and your school community wishes to receive communication, you have to know your parents and understand them first. So maybe there's an opportunity now, as we're kind of starting in the school year, to do a little bit of research to find out more about your parents. How do they want to receive information? What information do they want to receive? And finding out the best ways that you can reach out to them. So once you do the research in that, then you can develop your implementation, the communications, and you can start to plan. And of course, there is always the evaluation piece, which is just seeing if it works. And just seeing, is this a way that people want to receive information? Are you communicating too much? Are you communicating not enough? What information do your parent community need from you as a school council as you're operationalizing some of these school council business? So I'm happy to come out and talk more about this. I could talk about this for hours, but communication is definitely a passion of mine. So happy to go and support anybody with a communication plan to support your school. I also want to suggest, or at this time, just in June of every year, except for the first spring lockdown that we had, we ask for a school council annual report. And there is, I believe there's a little bit of a template in the handbook, but this is given out in May to be collected in June. It's a survey. And it asks us some critical questions about how you did. This is part of a little bit of our evaluation, but it's also an opportunity to collect a lot of the feedback that we have from school council members who are, reflecting on the year, finding out what their successes were, what were some of the barriers, and we collect it, and then we're able to use some of this information for events like tonight. I'm also going to put together some of the information for everybody, some of the highlights of that school council annual report, and I'll share that in the communication package. There's a lot of valuable information in there that might be helpful. So as we take a look at the last year, and we know that COVID has really disrupted a lot of practices that we've had, a lot of this is really some of the questions that we were asking is, how did you do during COVID? How did you operationalize and how did your school council do during this really challenging time? And I think when we look at some of the successes of the school council this year, I think that moving into more of technology was in some ways a success for some school councils. Of course, it was a barrier for others as well, trying to set that up and get that going. But what we consistently saw as part of that annual plan or annual report was that the virtual opportunities actually removed some barriers for some school councils. So some school councils did a little bit more engagement or more opportunities to meet because of the virtual opportunity. So obviously the challenge was that, we were during COVID, we couldn't do a lot of the things that we were able to do, but there were still some successes that were held. And there's a lot of good information here. About 48 people responded, representing 40 schools. We had about just a range of participants on school council, ranged anywhere, from, there were a couple to 10 plus. Some school councils had very robust school council with about 20 people on it. Some schools, and this is our work supporting the Parent Involvement Committee, some schools didn't have a school council. And that's something that we really want to work at and support our school communities and try to help them set up a school council to have that offered at their school. And just some other pieces of information. The average meeting The average frequency of meetings were 5 last year, so that's interesting. A number of people had about 60% of schools had a bylaw or constitution in place. So we know that there's an area that we can help support there. About 50% of school councils use social media. And if I can, in the package that I'll send to everybody, this year we were able to launch the school council guidelines the social media guidelines that apply to school councils, as well as to staff and as well as to any user of an account on behalf of a school or our board. So I'm really pleased to be able to share that with everybody. We have that, I'll share that through the information package, but social media is very important as we look at the reaching different parents, and this guideline provides some guidance for school council chairs and anybody who's operating an account on behalf of the school council to be able to help and use that in a way that can reach parents, and we can use that communication tool effectively. If anybody also has any questions about the email that you have access to, I'll be able to access any or have any of those questions as well. I haven't been able to monitor the chat while I've been talking, so I apologize. Maybe I will move over to the next slide and we'll get to the point of questions very soon. Amanda? No questions here.
Thanks, Sean. At this time, we're going to take any questions people have, but there's a few in the chat, Sean.
Perfect.
So one of the questions is, has public health actually stated that volunteers can't meet in person, or is that more of a school board collective insurance? Sean or Estella?
Yeah, I can answer that. It's not just for volunteers. The guidance from public health has indicated that we're to limit any visitors to the school. So that applies to families coming to school, volunteers, third-party visitors that typically work with the school. So in the larger sense, it's not just about volunteers. It's just about limiting the number of people coming in and out of the schools in general.
Thanks, Estella. And I think we have a question from Simon.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I was just typing my questions. I thought everybody's just monitoring the chat. So I just typed my question there. So whom should I reach out to for more information around the school nutrition program in partnership with other not-for-profit organizations? I'm a board member of Food for Life Canada, who, we provide nutritious food to all kinds of agencies, including school in Halton and Hamilton region. So I'm just interested in knowing more about that and see if Food for Canada can help in delivering food, nutritious food to school students who are in need.
That's wonderful. I'm not sure if Amber is still on this, but I would love to make the connection between yourself and Amber Aquin from my team, and we can take that away and support that connection and see what we can do. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Sean. Sorry, I am here. I can put my email in the chat, and you can certainly reach out to me, and we can have a conversation around sort of what this looks like, what we can do together. So I will add that to the chat right now.
Okay, great. So I most likely will have the ED to reach out to you with the director of running those social programs, and just get more information around that and see if there's anything we can do to help.
That's
sure,
wonderful.
that sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Amanda Lloyd has her hand up. Amanda?
I only have my hand up because I don't want the question that is in the chat from Stacy S to get lost, because it's now a little bit higher. So she was wondering about the school messenger and if this system is fixed for all parents now.
Is it fixed for all parents now? So it absolutely is fixed. I mean, it's all parents who submit the information in that emergency or contact information. I guess I chuckled at that because I know that School Messenger, this is an area that we're really focusing on this year. So let me tell you, when we did in the summer, we did a thought exchange, a survey to parents. And one of the things that we found out was that, or it just confirmed for us that we were communicating too much to families using School Messenger. But that being said, what we discovered is that it wasn't necessarily our messages that we were communicating. It was the system, the platform of School Messenger that was communicating to every single number that was in the system for School Messenger. So if you had, we tried to advocate that you can set your preferences, but we noticed that sometimes that doesn't always work. If you're a family with multiple children, let's say you have 3 children, 2 in elementary school, 1 in high school, you could get up to 9 messages for one message that we send. So we're taking this really seriously this year. We're really hoping to look at how we can streamline and support an efficiency with School Messenger so that I mean, it sounds so simple that one family household receives 1 message. And I'm not sure if that answers your question, but certainly we know that there are some challenges with the IT component of School Messenger, and we're trying to look at that to fix it. But as far as we know, it is accessible. We have inputted, I mean, all the data for a family, for a household, is in School Messenger in PowerSchool that feeds into School Messenger, and that is our #1 system that we use to notify parents. That's a great question. Is Yammer still used by HWDSB and school councils? Well, so Yammer is interesting because that is a board-supported tool that it's available. We found over the years that Yammer hasn't been very successful, and so we haven't necessarily been promoting Yammer. But we have kind of opened up new opportunities with MS Teams, and there could be potential for that. So while we don't promote Yammer as much, it is still available, and I think that just we haven't been able to really mobilize a large community, online community, into Yammer that makes it a robust platform for connections, if that makes sense. Oh, Amanda commented on that. Has public health stated? Oh, can't mean it. We already said that. I would be interested in seeing that language guidance from public health as well. Can I? Oh, but interesting. Sorry, I think I'm repeating some of the questions.
We're at Shannon, so that any ideas when we may be able to broaden fundraising options, even as far as dropping off outside by companies, for instance, and sending home with students, so no extra people in the school physically. Stella, maybe?
Yeah, that's there's lots of creative ideas and different things that are happening, so sometimes we don't consider all the possibilities. We are hoping to expand fundraising opportunities. We are waiting. I think I see that there's some announcement coming out next week about the plan for as a result of the data from the province. So that might be coming shortly anyways, but I do appreciate that there are other ideas out there. And so if someone has an idea that they think sort of aligns with what we're currently doing, if they want to chat with their principal about it, and then we can do some investigating about how that would actually work, and if it's meets, the general approach that we're taking right now in terms of really minimizing the contact, it could be considered. So yeah, it's just there's lots of different options out there that may be a little bit different than what we've outlined. Those were just some examples I had given, but please don't hesitate to talk with your principal about that, and it could be considered. Thanks.
The next question was, there was mention of electronic signs for communication. If our school doesn't have one, how do we get one? Sean or Estella, doesn't every school have those signs now? They were put in about 2 years ago, I think, in every school.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there are opportunities for new signs. So let me take that away because I'm not sure. Yeah, Lisgar doesn't have one. I'm not sure if there was a component to support school councils if they wanted to have funds raised for that. But let me take that away, and I will add that to the list of questions to be answered in my email later this week.
Were you referring to the electronic signs, though, Sean, that are out front of every school, right?
Yeah.
Those were provided by the board. They weren't.
And not all signs are electronic. Some are, some are not. But yeah, that's a great question.
What are the 2 grants for parent council? I heard one is the parent engagement fund of $500. And may I know what other grant funds are available? So the $500 is your school council startup / parent engagement money that every council is provided with at the start of the school year. The other grant right now that we work with is the Parent Reaching Out grant. So that is the process that we're working on right now through the Parent Involvement Committee to establish the application procedure. That information will come as soon as it's been formulated. In the past, school councils actually applied directly to the Ministry of Education. About 2 years ago, the ministry actually downloaded it onto the school board level. So we're actually coming up with a process so that you will probably apply similarly to how you would have in the past directly to the ministry. But that information will be coming once we have the process established. But as far as other grants, there's tons of grants out there if you do research. I know in the past at Mount Hope School, we've applied to the airport for a grant and been provided that. We've applied to a couple of other foundations. I believe, Sean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but Amy may have more information on grants that are available out there. So we can always have Sean include Amy's contact info regarding grant interests or grant applications. But there's lots of businesses out there. If you apply to them, will provide grants or funding to schools. Another good one is if you're close to where a landfill is, usually you can get grants through those companies. It just takes a little bit of work on your part to find all of the outside grants that you can apply for. The next question is the school council able to bring the concerns from the parents to the school board, such as the current mask exemption policy does not require a doctor's note? Stella or Sean?
I can speak a little bit to that if you'd like. Yes, there is a process. If your school council wanted to craft a letter, you could submit that to the Board of Trustees, and then it would go through a process. So for more information about that process, you could contact the board office, and Heather Miller could probably also help you with that. But there are ways to forward concerns to the Board of Trustees, or you can also share that with your principal, and that can be communicated via that way. But if you're looking for like a more official way directly to the trustees, then I would suggest crafting a letter as part of school council, or even as individual. You can submit that. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Estella.
Amanda?
Yes.
Would I be able to just see if Amy's here to just give a quick
absolutely. I think she was with us.
Oh, Sorry, Amy, there you are.
Hello,
Perfect.
everyone. I am here. Yes, so I'm Amy Leeming-Cote. I am the executive director for the Hamilton Foundation for Student Success, which is the fundraising arm for the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. The Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, nor any of its schools, are qualified donees as per CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, and therefore we act as the charitable arm for the school board. So any fundraising that you do that requires any sort of tax receipting, grant money, things like that would come to our foundation to be processed before heading back to the school for its intended use. So certainly the foundation is here to support all schools be successful in their fundraising. We certainly have a background in fundraising. We can pull on best practices. As I said, tax receipting. We also have some, especially in this climate that we're in right now, we do have some online fundraising platforms and resources that we can make available to schools if you would like to consider some online fundraising options to what you do. But certainly, I'm happy to work with you. There are grants out there and granting organizations, specifically the Hamilton Community Foundation, Heritage Green Community Trust, which Amanda mentioned with regards to landfills earlier, that will not accept an application from you without a letter of endorsement from our foundation. So please do reach out if you are looking to seek grants, because we can certainly help you with that and be supportive. We have a lot of relationships out in the community, and would be able to work with you to make sure that, again, you're as successful as possible out there. One thing that I will say to this group, because I have heard it a number of times and it comes up quite regularly, is that any funds that are designated for your school, any funds that are raised in support of your school, 100% go back to your school. Our foundation does not take any of those funds. We do have fundraising operations that we do for a general fund that support board-wide initiatives, system-wide initiatives. But our MOU with the school board and our working relationship with the school board allows that 100% of those funds go directly back to the school or the program for which they were intended to be used for by the donor. So, and I see my email's been repeated a couple times in the chat, so I'm sure my inbox will be very full in the morning. So that's my little speech. Thank you, and yeah, happy to answer any questions moving forward.
Is there a dollar limit for fundraising?
So tax receipting, it's a minimum donation of $20 to be able to issue a tax receipt. And we, if you're doing an a-thon, we have mechanisms that we can set up with you, to do online opportunities, but also to be able to facilitate that donation, those collection of donations through the school when we do more in-person, the old school envelope style, jump rope for heart style fundraising. We can do that type of thing as well once we move past some of these restrictions with COVID. And we're happy to work with your school, your principal, and your school council to bring those programs to life should you want to do that.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy. So Heather has asked that we reiterate the guidelines for remote student caregivers, and they're participating on school councils. So Estella, maybe you could review that. They have to. You have the policy. You probably know it better than me.
No, that's fine. So this year, as many of you know, there isn't a remote school that's separate. Remote classes are tied to a physical school, and the children in the remote class are part of that school community. So for families that want to engage with school council, then they would be part of the school community, school council, where their child is currently enrolled in their remote class. So that would be if you wanted to be a member of school council. However, it is always an option if you want to stay connected to the physical catchment school that your child would be attending in person, then you can always observe the meetings as a member of the public. They're always open, and to stay informed that way if you're so interested.
Thanks, Estella. The next question or comment is, we had an unusually low turnout at our first meeting this year. I was wondering if any other schools also found this. I'm trying to determine if it's COVID fatigue or specific to our community. It could be multiple things. There are other schools that have had low turnout or no turnout. I actually had one vice principal reach out to me regarding no one being interested in being chair on their committee. So it's happening out there. The best recommendation is to try to promote school council involvement with your friends in the community and hope that they'd like to join you. And in turn, they'll know other people that would maybe like to join as well. The next one is, can you provide contact as to who we reach out to in order to have our schools become more accessible? So you actually should work through your principal with any issues with your facilities. That's the proper process, is to discuss it with your principal if there's concerns about things within your school building. Just going through here. If school council has concerns with traffic and crosswalks, etc., is there a process to investigate, involve education center or the city? Estella, you want to take that one?
Yeah, no problem. So yes, it is through the city, and the process is usually they will send, so if you have there's an intersection of concern or crosswalk area that you're concerned about, they will send somebody out to monitor, and they collect data in terms of what's happening at that location, and then they'll make a determination as to whether or not this is for a crossing guard, if they're going to provide a crossing guard. I know you can also talk to the city about putting a formal crosswalk there or a sign or those kind of things. But I'm not sure exactly what the process would be or who to contact about that, but it is through the city.
We have a hand up. We'll go to Penny to ask your question.
Sure. Also, Penny is my daughter, and even though I log into my own account, it keeps switching me to her. So my name's Jolene. Just wanted you to know. But when it came to that question that somebody just asked, I know a couple of years ago we did I can't remember the name of it. It was like a safety walk. There's an actual term for it, and I was led to believe that it should be happening with every school every couple of years. I'd also reached out to try to see about having that with our school again, because we do have issues with speed. Also, we have 3 different speed limits within the one block that our school is on. But it is very informative if you wanted to try to implement anything, but there's an actual program that is very specific to those things. I just can't remember the name of it.
I think you're actually referring to the active and sustainable transportation.
That is exactly what it is.
It's through the city in cooperation with the school board, I believe.
Yep. So that's that. Like, if you were to look for anything for whoever asked that question, that's where I would go to, because I did one of those walkthroughs myself a couple of years ago, and I found it super informative. It's just there was a lot of pushback I found when there was very specific safety concerns. We have one intersection in particular that's very hazardous, and I'm not sure I 100% had faith in the reasoning as to why we couldn't make it safer. But I suppose you just have to be very diligent in following up.
Thank you. The next
Sorry,
question.
Amanda. If I could just add to the, I've added it to the chat, the active and sustainable school transportation link, and in there is an email address for somebody at the City of Hamilton who you could contact. We did it a couple of school years ago, and they brought bylaw officers out. They assess all the sidewalks around your school. They assess where the crossing guards are. They can bring in Green Venture program, which is a program outside of school to assist in education about walking to school and transportation and everything. So I've added it to the chat. I just wanted to mention that. Sorry.
Thank you. Is there a master list of fundraising that's permitted during COVID times? Estella, do we have a list?
Sorry, having trouble with my mic button. No, there's not really a master list. We've just set out the parameters around it. So if you had an idea that aligned with the parameters that we currently have, then it could be a possibility. But I gave a few examples earlier this evening, but really those are, just a few ideas. There could be other ways of and other opportunities that, we just haven't thought of. So coming up with a master list was a little bit tricky because, not knowing exactly what's available out there and what kind of creative ways people might come up with fundraising opportunities. Although, that's something that PIC could think about doing in terms of trying to come up with some ideas and sharing that with school councils as a starting point for some conversations at the schools. We could take that away. Thanks.
Thanks, Estella. This next one's going to go to you too. So, are there separate public health approvals for public and Catholic schools? Because I've noticed that HWDSB public health approvals differ from the Hamilton-Wentworth Catholic District School Board approvals. An example is Catholic schools have had pizza days and picture days from the start of school, and in the public board, school picture days were postponed due to public health approval. And then they also noticed the return to school guidance booklet that is linked from the COVID-19 updates indicates acceptable guidelines that aren't currently being followed by the schools. Estella, you can take this one away.
Yep, thanks. So both the Catholic District School Board and the Public District School Board have been working closely with our local public health unit. And so the information shared there and guidance provided there will be similar, but how it's operationalized in each board is different based on the different needs and different pressures within the board, and what and how it's managed may differ slightly, as you have pointed out. For pictures, photo day, we are the same as the Catholic board in that picture day are being organized and run. The delay may be in the because it's a third party service provider, and we're just trying to ensure that our attestation process is all in place prior to the companies coming into the school. So that might just be a delay, but there's certainly it's permissible and is happening in some schools. So hopefully that will happen soon at your school.
Thanks, Estella. I just see more information within the chat right now. There's public health is another great resource for fundraising ideas. A lot of healthy options. Ask your school nurse. I'm not sure what that refers to in regards to a school nurse. Stella? Any ideas?
Sorry, I was looking for the question. Could you read it to me again, please?
Public health is another great resource for fundraising ideas. A lot of healthy options. Ask your school nurse. Not sure that every school has a school nurse.
No, but some schools do have some, they have previously had some connection with public health, and some schools would have had a healthy action committee or team, and they did sometimes work on initiatives that promoted healthy living and healthy choices. And so there may be a connection in some schools related to that.
Thanks, Estella. And then Heather,
I'll just add to that. This year it might be a bit challenging because most of the public health nurses have been redeployed to support COVID. So it might not be as accessible as it has been in the past, but they certainly are it is an opportunity. Thanks.
Thanks, Priscilla. Heather, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people on here have been on councils for a while, but I thought it might be important while you have such a large group listening. This is obviously next year will be a year for an election. And I know from time to time, potential candidates reach out to school councils, and maybe perhaps through Sean, you could just give some guidelines around that in terms of, you know, candidates approaching your school councils and wanting to speak or provide any communication to the community. Thank you.
That's a great point. Absolutely. There are some guidelines, and I'm happy to bring that to the forefront for sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather and Sean. And I see no more questions in the chat right now. And there are no more hands up. So at this time, I would just like to thank you very much for attending tonight's event. And if you ever have any questions or are looking for school council support, you can always reach out to our Parent Involvement Committee through, I'm just putting the email address in the chat here. You can always reach out to us through pic@hwdsb.on.ca. We're happy to provide school council support and answer any questions people may have. So thank you everyone for attending, and I think that concludes our evening.